with my colleagues, Vice Chair Ryan Ramirez, Secretary Treasurer Ruth Ann Buffalo, and my name is Clara Pratt, and she Clara Pratt and Shia Kia Ani and Shlim Bilagana Bashish Chin Honarahni Dashache Tessa Anade Ayasa Nasha. So I am a Kia Ani, or Towering House People woman, and I grew up in a little community called Sessaana, but when I grew up it was called Lupton, but we've changed it back to our original ancestral name. So it's just one of the many ways that we're reclaiming Indigenous language and identity and culture. Thank you all for joining us here today. I'm honored to serve as your chair and to be of service to you for the Democratic Native Caucus. Along with my esteemed colleagues, what we do is we lead the caucus, and we work to bolster the participation of Native Americans in the activities and structure of the Democratic Party. We often get asked, what does the DNC Native Caucus do aside from sit in a room every meeting and talk about things? That's what we're really here to be your voices within the party itself and to advocate for our issues. We strive to also elect and recruit Native American Democrats to run for public office up and down the ballot and ensure the rights of Indigenous people are protected, including voter protection, which in this day, 2024, is still an issue for our tribal people across many of our states. And we also serve as a resource internally to the Democratic National Committee and to Democratic campaigns for information regarding Native American issues. Again, one of the things that I think that we always have to be mindful of is that many times leaders in the highest offices in the United States may have very little knowledge, little to no knowledge about Native American issues, or they think all Indigenous people are in this one grouping. And I know our good friend Charles Tegnan from Alaska, he's got different issues from his Alaska village than I do for Navajo Nation, than somebody from Wisconsin or Nevada, or even in the same state. Our good friends April here, who is from down south at Atam, Tahana Atam, they're different issues than what we face at Navajo. So we have to be mindful and educate not even just every election cycle, every single day. And we've got people that work full-time on the Hill on behalf of tribal nations to make sure that that gets done. So thank you so much for your tireless efforts and work. During the next several days, we are going to hear from top leaders on how the Democratic Party is prioritizing at the forefront of our party and agenda issues facing Indigenous communities. And we acknowledge that we strive to create better spaces for us in structures that were largely not built for us and that were intentionally built to keep us out. But we have more work to do, and I'm very proud to be with you in the ongoing process of protecting sovereignty, political inclusion, and understanding so that Democrats can continue to be that party to improve federal and tribal relationships. So with that, that's what we're all here for today in playing our small roles. We have so many important elected leaders in the room, and I just wanted to acknowledge all of you for doing that hard work of leading your sovereign nations every day. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my own tribal leader, President Boo Nygren, Shinantani from Navajo Nation. So thank you, President Nygren. So with that, I will turn it over to our Secretary Treasurer, Ms. Ruth Ann Buffalo, who is going to lead us into a couple of things. We're going to start out our day in prayer, as we often do, and we're also going to do our land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Good morning in the Hidatsa language. Niro Shadzi Nakbaga O Madashi Mia Adashheads Mabe Sigids Madzigidads Nakbaga O. Hello, good people, and good morning. It's really an honor to be here with you today. My name is Ruth Buffalo, and I carry my late grandmother Ruth's Hidatsa name, Woman Appears. I am an enrolled citizen of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation, also known as the 3 affiliated tribes. I was asked to do the opening prayer, but I wanted to also continue with our being respectful to our tribal protocols, and I've asked Chairwoman Amelia Flores if she would do us the honor of providing us with the opening prayer. Chairwoman Amelia Flores is Mojave, and she is the first elected chairwoman to the Colorado River Indian Tribes of Arizona.
Kamadhu, Inyepimul, Amelia Flores, Iman Bench, Ipasimul, Iman Bench, Amat Goel. I just said my name in my language and greeted you all in the Mojave language. I come from Park, Arizona, and in the valley we call it Amat Goel. So if you would join me, for those who cannot stand, please remain seated, and we'll continue with asking Creator to bless this time and this place. Kukek, Mativil, Kudik, Pipach, Akievam, Takievam, Kukek, Matavil, Jahaik. Father, we just, Creator, we just call you to come today. We come and acknowledge you in this place at this time and at this moment and second. We ask that you would just bless the speakers here this morning. We ask you to bless the convention that we are attending, that you have allowed your people, your people to be here today, the different tribes, the different nations to be represented here in Chicago. We ask and acknowledge the ancestors of the homeland that we are on now, and we do it with respect, and call forth the spirits to welcome us here in a good way, and not disrespect or in a bad way. So bless the leaders here. We ask that you grant them wisdom, and that our spirits will remain in a positive attitude throughout the next 4 days here. And we are so grateful that we can be a part of the Democratic Party. We are gun-ho for our Vice President and newly elect, with your favor, the President, the first woman President of the United States. So we ask favor as we go from this place, as we go on our different pathways, on our journeys, as we continue with our own individual stories as leaders and as Native Americans. We ask that you just bless each and every one. Matevil Chahaik, Kukek, Korinyam. Amen. Thank you.
Madzigidads, thank you, Chairwoman, for the beautiful words and the beautiful prayer. Ma Besagids, it's a good day. We're gonna jump right into the land acknowledgement. The Democratic National Committee wishes to acknowledge that we gather together to state our values on lands that have been stewarded through many centuries by the ancestors and descendants of tribal nations who have been here since time immemorial. We honor the communities native to this continent and recognize that our country was built on indigenous homelands. We pay our respects to the millions of indigenous people throughout history who have protected our lands, waters, and animals. While we meet in Chicago, we also recognize and honor the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe, also known as the Council of the Three Fires, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. We acknowledge the many other tribes who consider this area their traditional homeland, including the Miamia, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac and Fox, Peoria, Kaskia, Wea, Kickapoo, and Muscatine, Mascoutun. Let's see, and I believe that is our land acknowledgement. Madzigidads Nakbaga'o. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth Anna. And we'll also be joined at some point today, as we know, getting through the security, et cetera, can be a little difficult. But we'll be joined from Zach. We'll be joined by Vice Chair Zach Pamami, who is the Vice Chair for the Prairie Band of Potawatomi Tribal Council, who will also share some words with us. This is part of their ancestral homelands as well. And there's been some developments that have come with their land back efforts, so we're delighted that he'll be able to join us at some point. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Ryan Ramirez, to introduce our panelists who will be coming up and providing us some great information today.
I got to make it a little taller. I'm a little taller. Bonjour, Niji. Hello, my friends. I'm Ryan Ramirez. I'm an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians in Belcourt, North Dakota. My dad is from Pascuyaki in Arizona and was an enrolled member out at PY. And, I am your illustrious vice chair. But we're going to have a panel today more on the lines of kind of outreach in terms of urban Indians and broader looking at our Indian community more broadly. I'm married to a reservation Indian who kicks my butt all the time for being urban. So for those of us, Janine, that are urban, out there, more power to us. We're still around. We're still there. We're still there. So our panel is gonna consist of two folks. Janine coming out from who's the executive director of the National Urban Indian Family Coalition. She is Quinault and Oglala on her father's side and First Nations on her mother's side. Sorry, I'm not gonna be able to pronounce those. Janine is the founding executive director of the National Urban Indian Family Coalition, which is a national coalition representing 38 urban Indian centers and 26 cities and more than 2 million Native Americans living away from their traditional land base. That organization remains one of a few national organizations dedicated to maintaining the invisible visible and providing a platform and voice for this unrepresented population in America. And actually, Janine was really active in terms of helping create when Biden was running in terms of the Democratic platform, or for his platform, we had a section in there associated with urban Indians, which was really the first time anybody's ever really spoke to the issue of urban Indians as a president or a party in that regard. So she gets great kudos for that good work. So thank you for that. Yeah. And our next panelist is Judith LeBlanc, the executive director of the Native Organized Alliance. Judith is a citizen of the Caddo Nation. She has been the executive director of the Native Organizers Alliance for 8 years. She leads a national Native training and organizing network which supports tribes, traditional societies, and community groups, urban and reservation, in organizing grassroots political power to achieve Native sovereignty and racial equity for all. Judith is a board member of Movement Strategy Center and chair of the board of Indian Collective. She currently serves on the Environmental Justice Work Group convened by the U.S. Representative Raul Grijalva and Barbara Lee. Judith was a 2019 Roddenberry Fellow. In 2022, she was a resident fellow at the Institute of Politics at the Kennedy School of Harvard, at Harvard University, the Kennedy School of Government. So let's do a warm round of welcomes for them and ask them to come up and share some good words.
Thank you, Ryan. We have also had a switch up in our moderator, and the amazing Kim Teehee, who needs no introduction, has agreed to moderate for us. So we'll also welcome Kim up to the podium as well. And this is a joyful time. I don't want these other caucuses to be putting us to shame, so please feel free to make some noise. We're about to elect our first woman of color president in history. Let's hear some of those battle cries. This is jubilant, this is amazing, this is wonderful. And we're gonna be just in fellowship together over this next week. And yeah, this is exciting. So Kim is the Cherokee Nation's appointed delegate to Congress. Very, very important. She served in the White House. She's a longtime advocate for tribal communities. I'm a big fangirl of Ms. Teehee. She's a celebrity in my eyes. So we're just really excited to have her here. And you know, talk about team player. I messaged her at midnight. Would you please moderate this panel? 2 seconds later, yes. I don't want to know what she was doing at midnight, but she answered the call. She answered the call of duty. And real quick, y'all, this is being live streamed, so act right. You can save that for after 10 o'clock when we gavel out. But yeah, we're being live streamed here just to let everybody know. But yes, thank you so much, y'all.
All right, good morning. I had the pleasure of serving as a staffer for the DNC when at the first ever Native American desk. That was the first time a major party had actually devoted resources to having a Native American desk, which meant that was the engagement desk. That's myself and another lady were the first two people to run the Native American Caucus, and we were the first to organize the Native American Caucus at the Democratic Convention when it was in Chicago. And so it's a little full circle moment. I recall flying in previous to the convention and meeting with the Native community in Chicago at the American Indian Center, where I coincidentally also attended Head Start at, because I'm a product of Federal Indian Relocation Program. So I was actually born in Chicago, where my parents lived for 10 years, and I often say I was also a product of that policy's failure, because it completely underestimated our attachments to our family and our communities. And so while I'm blessed to have been a part of this community for a brief period of time, there was history there. Relocation program, the American Indian Center here in Chicago, which has a vibrant Native community and such, but it is a full circle moment, and I don't mind answering those late night texts and emails. Having had to go through this process myself, I had also made myself available if anything was needed. And so, and when you make yourself available and somebody calls you out on it, you make yourself available. And so it was my pleasure. Absolutely. And so, and I know we've got one more panelist who is coming, but we're gonna go ahead and get started, and he'll join us when he can. So as Claire mentioned, I am the Senior Vice President of Government Relations for Cherokee Nation businesses, and I also serve as a Director of Government Relations for Cherokee Nation, and I am Cherokee Nation's delegate to Congress, which is a nearly 2-century-year-old treaty right that was promised in our removal treaty. Thank you. And we hope to get seated in the House of Representatives, so we'll have another Native voice in the House whenever policy decisions and legislation are being considered that impact our various communities. We have some tremendous panelists with us today. First, we have Janine Comnote, who serves as founding executive director of the National Urban Indian Family Coalition, which is a national coalition of 38 urban Indian centers in 26 cities and more than 2 million Native Americans living away from their traditional homelands. Janine is an enrolled member of the Quinault Indian Nation. Thank you. Welcome, Janine. Next, we have Judith LeBlanc, who serves as Executive Director of the Native Organizers Alliance. She trains Native people in grassroots organizing to gain more political power. She is a citizen of the Caddo Nation. Welcome, Judith. and I'll recognize our other panelist when he arrives. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive in. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Indian Citizenship Act, which guaranteed the right to vote for all Native Americans. Some of our tribes, like Cherokee Nation, already had citizenship status through their treaties. But this law gave Indians, as a general matter, that citizenship status. Native voters are often overlooked demographically, yet we see Native voters deciding elections in key states like Arizona, Alaska, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, Wisconsin. It goes on and on. We couldn't say that 20 years ago, right? At Cherokee Nation, we began an initiative called Cherokee Vote about 10 years ago, and we've registered over 20,000 citizens across the country. And that's tribal, state, and federal races, where we take our registration program. Janine, let's start with you. Then we'll hear from Judith. How can tribes and Native people harness their political power in this election and beyond?
That's a really big question. So in the work of the National Urban Indian Family Coalition, we actually have grown from the time that bio was written to 55 urban Native nonprofits in over 40 cities, and now we now represent almost 4 million Native people. So I think that for our communities, both on and off reservation, I think there's a real need to recognize that these elections matter. We have seen firsthand what happens when elections matter. We see it with our Supreme Court right now. We see it at the local level. We see it at the national level. We know that policy matters, and it matters a lot. And I think that understanding the relationship between policy and what we do on a day-to-day basis, if you're talking about transportation, if you're talking about housing, if you're talking about food stamps, whatever it is, there's a policy agenda that followed that somewhere, and somebody made that decision. And so I think educating our folks about their vote matters. We know in places like Arizona and Michigan and Nevada that local races are often won by under 3,000 votes. So we matter. So we are the swing vote in a lot of these states. And for urban constituencies, which is who we primarily work with, it's also understanding that we are part of a larger urban diaspora that we are engaging in on a day-to-day basis and understanding that. And lastly, I would say that for this particular election, our work is nonpartisan. So since 2018, the NUIC has invested over $9 million into local 501c3 urban Native nonprofits. We've registered over 70,000 people to vote. We've gotten thousands of people, we call it butts in seats, to events and town halls and all kinds of things. So I think the education piece is probably the most important piece. And lastly, for this election, I think understanding that this election really is democracy itself on the line. And knowing that if you don't vote, your vote is actually a vote. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you. Judith, I'll repeat the question. How can tribes and Native people harness their political power in this election and beyond?
Well, I should just say what she said. So my name is Judith LeBlanc. I'm a citizen of the Caucus Nation, and I'm a wicked urban Indian. Boston accent. And I used to say that I walked with a moccasin on one foot and a high heel on the other. It's a sneaker.
So next time you take a question and respond, let's move the mics up a little bit closer to our mouths. So I think some of what you heard just a moment ago was not only the engagement piece, it's also using various platforms, social media, websites, newspapers, going out to your communities and engaging your citizens, reminding everybody what the dates are. You know, I mentioned jokingly, but it's also a serious comment. 20 years ago, we are in a different place than we were back then, right? We have resources. We've learned how to use those resources to build the kinds of relationships to give us a seat at the table. And we actually have people who are part of the DNC now. You have a platform that mentions Native Americans in a substantive way. And so part of this harnessing of our political power is making sure that from the outset we're a part of party platforms, that we're helping locally and state, county, federal elections to get Natives into those positions where they can have great influence over the policy that's being made to impacting our communities. We've already seen that play out with the elections of then a member of Congress, Deb Haaland, and Sharice Davids, who's still in office. We've had more Native Americans than in my lifetime. We've had it at sitting in a single Congress. Thank you. You know, but it's not just elected. It's not just elected positions. We have 6 federal Native women judges right now. So the more we can break that glass ceiling, the more we'll see our representation included in things that are not just reserved for Native Americans. We know we get the Native American desk. We know we get the Native American, positions. We know we get Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, and not to belittle or minimize those roles are very important, but it matters to us that we have a cabinet secretary, that we have federal judges, that we have people who are qualified to do these jobs and who can also help our community. So we'll move on to the next question. I feel like I'd add a little bit since Alex isn't here. Janine, I'd like to hear from you. Oh. Okay. Jamie Harrison, are you here from the DNC? What an honor. Of course, I'm going to yield the floor to you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Hello, folks. How are you all? Welcome to Chicago for the 2024 Democratic National Convention. First of all, I want to thank the leadership of our Native American Caucus, our chair, Claire Pratt, my brother from another mother, Ryan Ramirez, and of course, the one and the only Ruth Ann Buffalo. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. And I want to thank all of the tribal leaders that are here. I just saw my good brother, the governor, right there from the Gila River community in Arizona. I have spent so much time with him. But folks, I am so proud of this caucus. And listen, Ryan, is this the first time at a convention we are addressing not the Native American Council, but the Native American Caucus? And folks, that's a big deal. That is a big, big, big deal. And what we have seen over these last 4 years is that the Native American community is shining like it has never shined before. We are seeing on the federal level and the state level more and more Native Americans, more folks from Indian country who are getting elected to office. And of course, you all know my best friend, my good friend, my secretary, Deb Haaland. So I don't know if you all know this. Deb and I became state party chairs at around the same time. And so we have always been like this. And so when the rumors early on, Ryan called me up and said, as soon as Joe Biden got elected, it's like, man, we got this opportunity to get Deb to be a secretary. Man, I jumped on the phones because I knew the amazing leader that Deb Haaland has been as a state party leader. And I knew what she did in terms of breaking through that glass ceiling to get into Congress. And I knew she would be an amazing leader on the national level. And she has not only broke the glass ceiling, she has been making history time and time again. And I'm so proud of my dear, dear friend, Deb Haaland, who is our amazing Secretary of the Interior. I want to thank you all for what you do. I want to thank you for being leaders in your community. I am so grateful for all that you do to support this Democratic Party time and time again. You all are the difference maker in some of the most important states that we have right now. In the states of Arizona, in Nevada, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, it is Indian country standing up and saying unified in one voice, enough is enough. We're tired of the demonization that is coming from the other side, particularly from Donald Trump. And if there was any community that has been demonized probably more than any other by this guy who was twice impeached, convicted 34 times, judge said that he actually raped a woman. He's a disgrace to say that he was in the office of the presidency. And we know the derogatory things he would say about Indian country, about the Native American communities. But now we had a change. We have Joe Biden, who not only saw you all, not only heard the cries for investment, but has been fighting for you all and fighting for all of our communities. Think about the sheer, sometimes politicians talk. And I have this whole story about this one time. I'm going to say this before I go into this. When I first became chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, I remember visiting some of the rural parts of South Carolina. And I had some signs and stuff that I was trying to put up. And I went down this old dirt road in one of these rural communities in South Carolina. And I pulled up in the yard for one of these small little houses we call shotgun houses in the South. And some of you in the South know what I mean. They're long, and basically, if you shot a gun through the house, it would go straight through. And so I got out of my car. I had some signs in my hand. I went up to the door, knocked on the screen door, and there was this elderly African-American man who came to the door. And he looked at me, and he said, "Who are you, and what do you want?" I said, "Sir, I'm Jamie Harrison. I'm the chair of the Democratic Party." And he looked, and he said, "You the chair?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm the chair." He said, "So what do you want?" I said, "Well, this is a very, very important election, and so we really need you to go out and vote." He said, "Son, you see that road you came up on?" And I looked back. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What kind of road is that?" I said, "It's a dirt road." He said, "Son, that was a dirt road when Ronald Reagan was president. That was a dirt road when the Bushes were president. That was a dirt road under Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Son, that's still a goddamn dirt road. So until either you Democrats or Republicans pave my road, I don't want to deal with any of you." And he shut his door and he went in his house. And I started thinking about what this man really meant. For this man, now for those of us who lived on a dirt road, we know what dirt roads are, right? You got to get your car aligned all the time because you hit one of those big holes. But for this man, the most important thing was to get his road paved. And he had heard politician after politician talking about investing here and investing there, but never anybody paved his road. Now, for some of us, it could be a dirt road. For others of us, it could be a hospital that is closed, or a factory that is shut down, or a school that is falling apart. Ultimately, we are looking for leaders, regardless, Democrat or Republican, who are just going to deliver for us. We're not looking for the words. We're looking for the actions, for folks to fight for us, to see us, to value us. And I can tell you this with no equivocation. Joe Biden has been the most fighting for us president of my lifetime. And I know he has done it, and I know he has done it for Indian country. This is a man, he has poured billions. I ain't talking about, I didn't say millions, I said billions of dollars into Indian country. Focus on our infrastructure, making sure that there's broadband, making sure clean water is going into our homes, making sure that we protect the heritage of the Native American communities. And folks, tonight on that stage will be Joe Biden. And guess what? We are going to give him his flowers. We are going to thank him for all that he has done to stand by us and to celebrate us. That is what we will do. And this week, my friends, this week, his last selfless act, whereas Donald Trump is the most selfish president in the history of this country, a man who so desperately wanted to hold on to power, he was willing to risk the life of his vice president. Joe Biden is the most selfless president that we have ever had, who understood that in this moment, if I can't carry this baton in order to protect Americans' freedoms, in order to protect Americans' rights, I'm going to give it to the next best person, and that is his MVP, our Madam Vice President, Kamala Harris. And of course, you know, I often say this, the Republican Party is a party of fear. But folks, we are the party of hope. And this convention is going to be about hope and joy. And on the team Hope and Joy, we have our MVP, our Madam Vice President, and we got our coach, Tim Walz. And we are going to hear their stories. We're going to hear about how they have fought for us. And you know, when Tim Walz becomes the vice president, we're going to get our first Native American governor in Peggy Flanagan. So you see how all those dominoes have fallen? And they're falling all for us, and they're falling for your communities. I am so excited. I am so hopeful. I have so much joy right now. And I think it's contagious because I'm seeing it all around the country. And I know you're seeing it in your communities. Now, folks, this is what the vice president has told us time and time again. I hope you get your vitamins, go to Costco, do what you got to do, you know, get vitamin up, get your nice running shoes or walking shoes or whatever you have, some flexible pants and all, because we're going to be knocking on some doors. We're going to be making some phone calls. We're going to get our nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas. We're going to get them in the cars and do whatever we need to do to take them to that ballot box to vote. Because when we vote, we make hope real. But when we fight, folks, what do? We win. When we fight, we win, and we are going to win this election. Thank you all so much for what you do. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you this morning. Thank you. Thank you.
That's our chairman, everybody. Thank you so much, Chair. Keep this energy up. We are gonna send our President Joe Biden out on a high note. Chair, thank you for all your work and advocacy and being a great ally for the Native community. Now, you know, President Biden knew what he was doing when he chose Kamala for the vice presidency. And she knows what she's doing when she chose Coach Tim Walz to be her running mate. So let's give an amazing Indigenous Indian country welcome to our vice presidential nominee, Governor Coach Tim Walz, please.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, good morning and welcome to Chicago. Wow. Madam Chair, thank you. Thanks for the work that went into this. How about the chair of this party, Jamie Harrison? My God. That every day wakes up joyful about the work we do, does the work necessary, does the work in front of him. Well, to each and every one of you, thank you. Thank you for being here. Hopefully, the last 11 days have been a bit of a whirlwind for me. People are learning a little bit about me. And I hope this is a group that knows a little bit about us, because there's something in Minnesota that we take very seriously, and that's tribal sovereignty. And it's not lip service, it's actions. And it's not when it's convenient to have tribal sovereignty, it's every single day about every single decision that needs to be made. And that's the way it needs to be done. You heard Vice President Harris in Arizona say sovereignty and said it on that stage. To have a United States president understand what we're talking about here, understanding about what it means. In Minnesota, I think you all know this, we have 11 sovereign nations, Anishinaabe and Dakota. And our history in Minnesota, just like the rest of across this country, is dark. But the inability to acknowledge that has held us back for a long time. But in Minnesota, we've acknowledged it's not just enough to admire a problem. What are you going to do to make a difference? What are you going to do to partner? What are you going to do to acknowledge the first Americans? And what are you going to do to understand that our state of Minnesota is stronger because of our 11 sovereign nations? We are better and more just. So I know the Vice President will talk about that. We did it in Minnesota. Many things that we did, from codified into law, that before any decision in state government's made, consultation is a must, and it must be documented, and it must work both ways, all the way to after many, many years, removing our racist flag and putting up a new flag in Minnesota to a new day. So to each and every one of you, you know what's in front of us, and it's the opportunity. We know what the other side brings or doesn't bring. We know what that is. We know what they're talking about. This is about a more inclusive society. This is about a society that is bold enough, and this is a good enough country to acknowledge everything in our past, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but to be accountable for how are we going to do things differently? How are we going to move things forward? How are we going to make sure that this truly is towards a more perfect union? And those steps are going to have to be concrete. Those steps of making sure we're reducing those systemic barriers that are in place, and of making sure that we're listening, making sure we're truly listening. And so whether it's talking about access to capital for businesses, whether it's about the opportunity for our children to receive a quality education, or whether it's our shared commitment to make sure that we are stewards of the land and the air and the water, and how are we going to make sure we're doing that right. And look, we saw it in Minnesota who did that. I said what Indian country doesn't need is, you don't need a whole bunch of gatekeepers holding the money and telling you when and you can get it and when you can't. To understand that the knowledge is out there. And we saw it during COVID. In Minnesota, we took COVID seriously because our neighbors' lives were at risk. And you know who was doing the jobs of vaccinating and who were the first ones there? It was our indigenous communities that were out there. When vaccines were short and our tribal communities had extra, they vaccinated their neighbors regardless of where they came from. They cared for their neighbors. This sense of duty, this sense of community is something. We got 78 days to wake up on that 79th day to say with great pride, congratulations, Madam President. Long overdue, long overdue. So look, this is a group that understands a little about hard work, understands a little about perseverance, understands a little about community, understands a little bit about preparing for the future, not just tomorrow, but for generations out. We have an opportunity in 78 days to change that in a positive way. And as I've been saying, is hard work does not scare anybody in this room. And I've been telling people, we can sleep when we're dead. Not now, not now, not now. Get the work done. And look, I think everybody knows in here, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but a very interesting thing will happen, and I'm privileged to be on this ticket. When we elect Vice President Harris to the presidency and me to the vice presidency, Minnesota will get a new governor. So, and to have an Anishinaabe woman leading the state of Minnesota and understanding what our bright future together looks like, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. And if there's one thing I've learned is, throughout my life and through all of this, you surround yourself with strong women and listen to them, things will go pretty well. Things will go pretty well. So as Peggy has taught me, chi miigwech to each and every one of you, let's go on and win this thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. I know we're calling him Coach, but I think he just earned a new nickname. I think that's Uncle. I think that is Uncle Tim right there. I think we just got an Uncle Tim. Woo! So are we ready to do this or what? LFG. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, move it out the way. Uh-oh, did I move your stuff? It's right here.
Wow, one more special surprise, and I'm gonna faint because this is awesome.
And then after you go, if you want to pass it over to Mayor Regina Romero.
Okay.
She'll be the next one.
Okay, awesome. All right. All right, so that was so exciting, and we're going to get back into the Native Vote panel after all of that. You know, but to tie everything back into what Governor Walz was saying, at the end of the day, you know, voting matters, right? Voting matters. Our voices matter, and we've proven time and time again. And I just keep thinking back of where we were 20 years ago and where we are today, that we're no longer a Native American Council, we're now a Native American Caucus, and that affords us greater status within the DNC, and that's truly remarkable. But we also know there's still challenges at the poll. We know that our relatives in the most rural parts of this community are still having difficult times getting to a poll. Our tribal IDs are still not accepted everywhere. There's still so many barriers that we need to look past, and we still need the Native American voting rights to be passed into law so that we can start removing those barriers. So we're joined by Alex Blenkinsop, who represents the Coalition of Large Tribes, which advocates for tribes with large trust land bases on important issues such as energy and land and others. And so we're going to begin another round of questions. Janine, I had left a last question with you, and so I will repeat it. I'd like to hear from you, from your perspective as an advocate for urban natives, how are these issues different and similar for urban natives?
Which issues?
You can name them. Which issues are different or similar?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So I think for urban natives, what we really look at is that we are geographically spread out, and the reason we're there is relocation. So the Relocation Act brought a majority of Native Americans now live in cities and in suburbs, and within those cities and suburbs, our communities are really forced to come together in community, multi
Thank you. Thank you. Alex, since you just joined us, let me go ahead and throw a question your way. What barriers are Native people facing in exercising their right to vote, and what can we do about it?
That's a great question. I think that a different way of putting that same question is, what barriers haven't been erected that could possibly be erected? Because it seems that at every turn, a certain party tries to make it very difficult for natives to vote. And that is especially the case on reservations that are very, very large, where people have to travel miles and miles just to cast their ballot. So one issue about the barriers that have been erected are a function of our government not working well for us. Then there are also the barriers that come with all of the difficulties from living on a reservation. For example, like I just said, having to travel miles and miles, having dirt roads that might be impassable during certain seasons. All of this makes it very difficult. We heard earlier about how tribal IDs are often not accepted. So I think all of these are examples of some of the barriers that are felt especially among tribal nations, populations that have large land bases. But one thing that I want to emphasize is that there is a plan to fix this. In the past few Congresses, Democrats have introduced the Native American Voting Rights Act. And this is a fantastic piece of legislation, spearheaded by Democrats, that would really change a lot of these barriers, would tear down many of these barriers. It hasn't yet been reintroduced in this Congress. I'm a former Hill staffer, and word on the Hill is it might be introduced again in the future. But one thing that you should all be doing, if you really want to be an ally of tearing down these barriers, if that's a goal that you share with me and with Colt, is to ask your representatives, your senators, your members of Congress, to support the Native American Voting Rights Act when it gets reintroduced. And I think all of this also serves to underscore the necessity of Democrats continuing to hold the White House, continuing to hold the Senate, and retaking the House of Representatives, because this bill is much less likely to get enacted without the support and the work of everyone on the ground who's helping Democrats in this election cycle.
Thank you, Alex. Judith, I'll turn the same question over to you. What barriers are Native people facing in exercising their right to vote, and what do you think we can do about it?
Well, I think that both my colleagues here have covered what it is that we're challenged by. But I think we got to go a little bit deeper about what the solution is to having the right to vote after 100 years of having citizenship unilaterally put upon us. From our perspective, we have perceived that we're dual citizens. Child Welfare Act was going to be totally smashed by the Supreme Court. We saw in 13 states passed Indian Child Welfare Act, state-based coverage, right, to fill the gap. And that was all led by native state legislators. They worked and got it passed. So that's what we have to do about voting rights. We have to focus and build coalition and hopefully pass the kind of laws on the state level that will benefit all voters.
All right, thank you. All right, finally, we'll go to our last question, and I'll start with Janine. Janine, what is the future of Native representation and Native political power, and how can we harness this energy to make strides for Indian country?
So I think, one of the things that we always say at the NUIC when we work with our organization, so we have a program called Democracy is Indigenous, because democracy is actually indigenous. And in our Democracy is Indigenous cohort, we work with 25, we work in 25 cities and with 2 national groups. And when we work with our local groups, we always tell them that resources follow policy, and policy follows elections. So if we want our communities to thrive, and what we see is at the local level, city, county, state legislatures, at the local level, when our communities know how to navigate through those policy arenas, they have more resources. Our tribes have more resources. Understanding for our urban native communities that our vote, that our tribes in our state, our home tribes where we are citizens, those tribes also have to work with state legislators. And so our vote actually matters for our tribes too. The urban vote matters for the tribes. So part of what we're really dedicated to doing is ensuring that local communities know how power works. They know how to, sometimes power looks like being on the school board. Sometimes power looks like being on a design committee in your city or your county. It's looking at like city council. And we also we really concentrate on where institutional racism lives. And institutional racism lives at the bureaucratic level. And so how do we begin as people to understand that the elections matter, and they matter a lot, but also it's all of those workers who are working in these various bureaucracies that oversee our day-to-day lives, and understanding that sometimes you make change by working at that level and advocating for Native people at the local level, at all levels. So, when I think about this question, I think about, we need more candidates, but we also need Native people to sit on the boards and commissions in your county and your city, because often that's where we start grassroots power building.
Alrighty, I'm going to turn the mic over to Ryan because we have another special surprise. He's going to introduce them.
Well, they're talking.
Oh, they're talking. Okay.
They're taking pictures now.
All right. Well, Alex, I reserve the right to interrupt you. What is the future of Native representation and Native political power, and how can we harness this energy and make strides for Indian country?
With a senator in the House, I think it's appropriate that I help try to encapsulate the power of the Native vote with 2 numbers, and those numbers are 50-50. That's the current split in the United States Senate, which has allowed Vice President Harris to cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate more times than any vice president in history. Without that 50-50 split, there's no Inflation Reduction Act. Without that 50-50 split, there is no American Rescue Plan, which provided the largest investment of resources into Indian country and tribal communities in U.S. history. And here's why this all comes down there are about 60,000 Native voters in Montana. In Arizona, Native people make up about 6% of the population. That's well over 400,000 people. And in 2020, President Biden carried Arizona by 45,000 votes. Senator Booker is in the majority because of the Native votes.
Hey. Thanks, Alex. Well, our next guest, I don't think needs any introduction. He's always been a good champion for us and always been, one of the first people to sign up and come to our caucuses and stuff. And, that's going back when I was chair to with Claire's chair. And so we're really proud to have with us today he gives a great impassioned speech. I mean, I expect folks to be standing up and yelling. But Senator Cory Booker, thank you for joining us, and would love to hear a few words.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. Please sit down. I can't tell you what it means to be in community with everyone here. I am a senator from New Jersey, and I've met some extraordinary people in my time in the Senate who have taught me so much about our tribal nations, and I instantly felt a kinship with this community. Look, I come from Newark, New Jersey. I'm the only United States senator that lives in a community that's below the poverty line. We don't mistake wealth with worth. And all around us are deep unfairness and injustice from a criminal justice system. And Native Americans have the same kind of challenges with a justice system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. With a healthcare system where literally the lowest life expectancy in the nation is Native American and African American men. Around me were toxic environments, whether it's Superfund sites or lead in our water. We're breathing air in my community where my children in Newark had 4 times the asthma rates of the surrounding suburbs. And in so many ways, I always say that Newark, New Jersey, and my journey there helped me stare the wretchedness of the world in the face. I always say, if America hasn't broken your heart, you don't love her enough. Because to love this nation passionately is to feel this sense of urgency that America be America. One of my favorite all-time poets is a man named Langston Hughes, who wrote this extraordinary poem in 1936 when this nation was savagely in a state of savage injustice and bigotry and laws of the land that denied people of color equal rights. And yet he loved this nation so much. As the people in this room know, how you can love a country so much that hasn't always loved your ancestors back. And this is what Langston Hughes wrote at the end of this incredible poem. He said, "Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, but yet must be. The land where everyone is free, the poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me." And who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must make our mighty dream live again. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. And so when I look around this room and I hear the truth when I walk in, that literally the vote of our Native people swung the difference from Joe Biden clashing with the Senate over and over again, not being able to get cabinet officials appointed, to him being able to have undoubtedly the most productive presidency of my lifetime. From my brother Tester, to my sisters in Nevada, to Arizona. You could go through the states in which the Native vote was the defining feature of which way that state went. And so there's a lot of this praise this week, and I think it's truth. We have great leaders in our country that have titles. But we all know that leadership is not a position or a title. It is an action and a service. And so I feel like I'm one of the handful of people probably in this convention who can tell lots of personal stories about Kamala Harris. I really love the fact that I've known her for years and years and years and years. Before she was a senator, she was my friend. And the great thing about her, when she got to the Senate, I was begging her not to run for governor in California. I was begging her to run for the Senate because I was the only black person in the Democratic caucus then, and I knew that the Senate was urgently in need from people of different lived experiences. I was like, please, baby, baby, please, baby, baby, please, baby, baby, please, run for the United States Senate, because no one ever in the history of America has had your lived experience. And I knew that when she came that she would be a standard bearer for issues that are urgent, that most Americans maybe don't realize that they have champions like her for, the kind of stuff that doesn't make headlines. But when I was looking for a partner on maternal mortality rates, which in this nation are horrific. Overall, we're the worst country of the Western nations for children dying in childbirth, premature birth, and women dying in childbirth. But it's worse for who? Black populations and Native populations. When I needed someone to stand up for farmers of color, when I needed someone to stand up for environmental injustice, when I needed someone to partner with me, she was either there to partner with me or challenging me to step up and partner with her. But that's not why I was so excited about the invitation to come here. I was excited to come to the invitation here because I know that she's a great leader, but we've had great candidates before. We've had the best candidates before. They still lost the general election. This election won't be won by who has the better candidate. I'm sorry. It's going to be won by what we do, because we're the leaders that we've been looking for. Because in the United States of America, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. We know elections are won in the communities, in the neighborhoods, in the native lands. And so I want to end by telling you just a story from my city. I feel like I got my BA from Stanford, but my PhD on the streets of Newark. And that city broke me down and built me back up so many times. I learned about what real hope is from a woman on the 5th floor of the projects who taught me that hope is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. That when you're facing despair, when you're facing every logical reason to give up hope, you making the conscious decision that in the absence of all evidence for hope, then I will be the hope. In absence of all evidence for love, I will bring love. When the world seems ruthless, I'll bring the compassion and the empathy. The test of the moment will always be not what happens to us. The stories of our peoples is full of tragedies, but the greatness of our peoples has been our consistent, unyielding, indefatigable ability to overcome those challenges. The very fact that we are here in this room, every one of us, baked into our DNA, are survivors, are people who persevered, are people who said, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may try to trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I rise. And so the final story I'll tell is from one of my PhD classes in Newark. You see, we had a storm coming to our city, a storm coming to our state. Now, we have a metaphorical storm in our country right now that's trying to sweep away women's rights. It's trying to sweep away reproductive rights. That's trying to sweep away civil rights. That's trying to sweep away union rights. That's trying to sweep away so many of the gains that we and our ancestors have made. But here was a literal storm. And I jump into my command vehicle because I'm mayor of the city of Newark, and I'm driving around. The wind is literally shaking our car, and the water, the rain coming down so hard that it was hurting our skin when we got in. But we were driving around just to make sure everything was locked down. The storm was about to impact our coast, and we knew we had to create safety in the city. So I had curfews on and everything, but I was going to give one more drive around. And as I'm driving down this long stretch, my cell phone rings. And I answer my cell phone. And forgive me, because this is going to sound disrespectful, but when I answer the phone, the voice on the other line asked me what I believe is the stupidest question in America. I thought it was the stupidest question. Forgive me, I know that sounds rude and disrespectful, but you tell me, this was a question. I answer my phone, and the person says, "Hello, this is the White House operator. Will you hold for the President of the United States?" I'm like, who says no to that question? Who says no? And this is like 2012, so you all know, like, I miss Obama. I miss Obama. And I miss her husband, too. But Michelle, I miss Michelle. Michelle, I love you. If you had married me, I'd be president now. So I say, yes, I'll hold. And the next voice I hear is Michelle's husband. And the President of the United States is in the Oval Office, and he's just checking in on me, seeing how I'm doing, and checking in on the people of the city of Newark, knowing this storm is about to impact us. It was really a moving moment, a kindness, grace, and we had a good conversation, maybe 5 minutes. And then I hung up the phone, and the next thing you know, I get a call. This time, no operator, it's just the governor of my state. He's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, but we have too much partisanship. A storm is coming in. It's not a time for left and right. It's about how our country's going to make it through, how our city's going to make it through, how's our state going to make it through. We had a very good conversation. And then I hang up with him, and I look up at the top of the hill, and I see that all the trees at the apex of the hill came tearing down, fell down, pulled down the telephone poles too. And so now there's this jangle of wood and wire, shattered splinters all over the place. But as we're getting closer, I see a big floodlight being waved at me frantically. And we were going to slow down anyway, but this guy was making sure that we did. And we slow down, and I see that he's wearing this yellow slicker, and the officers pulled over just so my window was facing his window. And I roll down my window, and I see it's an elderly man. This elderly black man, and the wind and the rain, and I raised my voice. I'm sorry. I yelled at him. I looked at this man, and I said, "What are you doing out here?" And this man looks at me like I just asked him the stupidest question in America. He points over to the wood. He points over to the wires. He points over to the danger, and he says, "Mayor, I'm standing out here to make sure no one comes along and gets hurt." I had just talked to the President of the United States of America. I talked to the governor. I'm the mayor of the largest city, but the greatness I best saw exhibited on that day was the man standing on a hill in savage storm and dark of night, holding up a light so that other people won't get hurt. That is who we are. That is what has gotten our nation through. That is the strength of our ancestors, those who stood on the hills, stood in the storms, put themselves at risk. And so now, us, inheritors of that legacy, I ask you, will you stand with me on the hill? Will you stand for women's rights? Will you stand for civil rights? Will you stand for voting rights? Will you stand for reproductive rights? Will you stand for the vulnerable? Will you stand for the sick? Will you stand for the generations not on board? Because if we stand together and we work together and if we fight together, because when we fight, thank you, everybody. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, we have another speaker. All right. All right, we have another speaker. And so at this point, if I could call upon Tucson Mayor Regina Romero. Tucson Mayor Regina Romero. Regina. There she is. Rahina Romero. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, buenos dias. Alrighty, so Senator Cory Booker just took us to church, I heard. Oh my goodness, this is the power of passion, everyone. This is the power of doing the right thing. My name is Regina Romero. I am the daughter of Jose Romero Noriega and Josefina Arvizu Durazo. My relatives, the Otam, really taught me how to introduce myself. They taught me how to introduce myself and introducing my parents. Because of them, I exist. And because of the history that runs through their blood, I exist, and I carry it with me. So I am lucky to be the mayor of the city of Tucson, Arizona, where the Otam have stewarded that land since time immemorial. And the Pascuayaqui people have lived in our beautiful Sonoran Desert for thousands of years. Wow, I have no words after that incredible speech by our future Vice President, Governor Walz, and our senator. That is so important to make sure that we elect people like Senator Booker. I mean, good Lord, the passion that he carries is so evident. And I think it was Jaquine, you stated that one of the most important things that we can do is locally participate, right? Especially our urban brothers and sisters, our urban Native brothers and sisters. And I have the pleasure of speaking in front of my chairman, Tohono O'odham Chairman Verlin Jose is here. And my Pima County recorder, Gabriela Casares Kelly, who is here. Gabriela, our first Otam elected official in the entire county. And not the last, that's right. So my father and mother taught me, my kids, I'm the sixth generation Sonoran Desert dweller. My kids are the seventh generation Sonoran Desert dweller. And the Sonoran Desert is on both sides of the border. And so I consider myself really of the Sonoran Desert, which is right on both sides of the border. All my generations have lived on the Mexican side of the border, and I was the first one in my family to be born. I'm the sixth of six children. I'm the first one in my family to go to college, the first one to vote. My parents hold a dual citizenship and held on to me the importance of voting, right? They said, Regina, right now you are the only one in our family that can vote here, and your vote will represent 8 of us. And so that's what my parents taught me, to engage civically, to care for my community, and to invest in my community. And my father taught me the importance of protecting our land, our water, our air, and our animals. Our animals. I remember he would always say, you know, we'd have coyotes around that would make a mess in our front yard, and he's like, we invaded their space. What do you expect? So he taught me the love of my environment, of our environment, of Mother Earth. And, you know, he also taught me the importance of recognizing the native people that have been in the Sonoran Desert for thousands of years. The Yaqui, the Otam, the Seris, on both sides of the border, and the importance of seeking advice from the native people of our land, the land that they shared with us. And so when I became a council member, I first became a council member in 2007, first Latina ever to become a council member, served for 12 years. First woman and first Latina to ever become the mayor of the city of Tucson. Always invested my time in making sure that I worked with our Native brothers and sisters and I am lucky because in Tucson, we have more than 4,600 years of history right on the foot of a mountain. I represented that area for 12 years. And on the foot of a mountain, which, by the way, the name Tucson derives from that name, right? It's a Hohokam name, Chukchon, Chukchon. And we have the archaeology right there. And I remember that in making sure that I brought the spirits back into that land, I sought the advice of the chairman of the Otam Nation, and I said, this land needs blessing. And I said, this land, we have to tell the story of this land. And so many, many years passed, and nothing was able to be done. And when I became mayor, the councilwoman that now represents that area, that was my council aide, said, you know what, we've been doing it all wrong. We have to give that land back to the Tohono O'odham people. And that's what we set out to do. And mayor and council voted historically. I think we were the third or fourth city in the nation to give land back to the people of that land, the Tohono O'odham people. And I tell that story only to recognize that the history of our land and where we're from and the people of that land deserve, you all deserve to have that sovereignty, to have that hope for the future that has been ignored for hundreds of years. And so what I love about the service that President Biden and Vice President Harris have done is to recognize and highlight that past, that beautiful past that we all have, that we all share because of the native people of this country. And they have made space. Deb Haaland becoming the Secretary of the Interior. About time. And the work that the Biden-Harris administration have done, historic investment, billions, like was said earlier, billions of dollars invested into Native nations, into Indian country. And yes, we should celebrate it, and it's wonderful, but it should not be the last. Billions of dollars. It should not be the last. And investment in internet, investment in clean water, investment in decontaminating our land. But more has to come. Why? Because the historic wrongs of disinvestment need to stop way past, right? That's why we're not going back. That is why we are not going back. We have fought for hundreds of years to be seen, to be heard, and we're not going back. We have taken wonderful steps forward, but we need to do more. And the administration that has done more for the people that need the most is this administration. It's this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, and we want to do more. So as we prepare for the convention, as we prepare to get all excited in the next 4 years, we need to do what Governor Walz has just indicated we do. We can sleep after the election. Actually, as a matter of fact, we can sleep better if we elect Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. And by the way, a vote for Harris-Walz is a vote for Peggy in Minnesota. As a person that has been the first of many things, I want to see the first Native American governor of this country. I want to. So I had a bunch of numbers here that I wanted to talk to you about, but I won't because I would be preaching to the choir, and we've already gone to church this morning. So you all are here because you know what this election means. You all are here because you know that voting rights, especially in Indian country, are at risk because we know that public education, which is the great equalizer for many of us, is at risk because unions are at risk, because reproductive freedom has already been trampled on. So you all know what is at risk this election season, and we need the Native vote. As you have turned out in Arizona, in Nevada, in Colorado, in Nuevo Mexico, you have turned out, and really, you have been saving democracy. You have been saving democracy. So let's get really excited. Let's talk about an agenda that is inclusive. And by the way, I'm the co-chair of the platform committee for the Democratic National Convention, and absolutely, Native sovereignty is right there in black and white. So thank you all so much. I was so intimidated to speak after Senator Booker, but let's continue the conversation. Let's make sure that we have a unified agenda moving forward, and let's make sure that we elect our future President Harris, and Vice President Walz. And let's elect Peggy!
All right, that concludes the Native Vote panel, and there's one more. Don't go anywhere. Ryan will introduce the next panel.